In this new era of business as unusual, organizations around the world are trying to figure out, what does the new normal look like for us? How do we adapt, change, lead in order to thrive in an environment that's constantly changing? Now, looking at the most successful organizations who have managed to adapt and thrive during uncertainty, they have actually embedded innovation at the culture level of their organization, which gives them a beautiful platform, a springboard, if you will, to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. Now, the challenge for every other organization out there is, well, how do we actually embed innovation at the culture level? Because innovation traditionally appears inside an organization as part of R&D or special projects or design thinking workshops or innovation and creativity spaces. It's never really at that cultural level. And that presents a unique challenge because we need to make innovation more accessible to everyone within the organization, not just the individuals in those different siloed groups. And the way we do that is we need to change the way we talk about innovation. Consider the last time you saw a presentation on innovation. What did the presenter say? Was it some sort of a case study that basically went, the organization had this challenge, then we did this, and now because of that, we're able to do this? Well, hey! And that's how innovation is spoken about. Some sort of logical thinking that led to a change in process. Now, the problem is that we as human beings, we're emotional creatures. We want to feel stuff in order for us to engage. And particularly post-COVID, we're all feeling some level of pain. Doesn't matter who you are or where you are on the planet, COVID has come along and impacted us all equally. But we're all handling it in different ways. And because of that, when you change the way you talk about innovation, all of a sudden you make it more accessible to people out there. You make it believable. And when something is accessible and believable, people just naturally want to be a part of it. And thus it becomes easier to embed innovation at the cultural level, giving your organization ability to do things that it couldn't do before quite quickly. So I want to introduce you to a new way of talking about innovation, heart-centered innovation. And before I break down my framework behind me, I just want to share with you a really quick story that I think will help you understand how this works quite well. My mate Mitch shared the story about his dad, who he describes as a traditional blue-collar engineer. So his tools of choice aren't those fandangled computer thingies or algorithms. No. Mitch's dad's tools of choice are his own two hands. He builds and creates stuff from his hands, and he's done so his whole entire life. Mitch was telling me how when he was a young fella, he'd look out over the fields and his dad would be out there in the property fixing something, and he'd run over to his dad and say, Dad, can I do what you're doing? And of course his dad would say, of course, son, let me show you how this works. And he'd teach it to him just once, and Mitch would never get the hang of it. And as a result, his dad would take back control and fix it himself, because that's the kind of guy he is. And this happened throughout his whole life. And then one day, Mitch's dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And for those of you who don't know about the disease, it's a degenerative disease that basically disconnects your mind from your muscles. And so this guy who'd spent his entire life by using his hands had to come to the crazy acknowledgement that he would no longer be able to use his hands one day. Can you imagine what that would do to a person that only feels fulfilled when they're using their hands? It's an incredibly hard pill to swallow. And so Mitch's mum and dad made the hard decision that, look, we would like to be closer to our family when things got tough. And so they moved out closer to Mitch's sister and they bought this beautiful rural property. And Mitch's dad, being Mitch's dad, he didn't slow down at all. He was always fixing things, building things, creating things, using his hands as much as he could. He'd even climb up on the ladder, perhaps when he shouldn't have, and go on the roof to clean the gutters out. And while he was up there one day, he started to realize that, you know what? One day, I'm not going to be able to do this. And so what's my darling wife going to feel like when that happens? How is she going to clean the gutters? And being the creative, innovative type that he is, he designed and built a simple system so that all Mitch's mum needed to do was go outside, pull on these chains, and a device would go around the gutters and clean them. That, my friends, is heart-centered innovation. And you must agree that it's completely different to the way that we normally talk about innovation. So let me break down the components of heart-centered innovation so that you can learn each of the components and figure out how to embed it into your organization. So let's take a look at the board here. The first component in heart-centered innovation is you gotta care. You have to care. You have to exhibit care, and people need to know that you care, because if you don't care, it doesn't happen anywhere, right? And what did Mitch's dad do? He cared. He cared about his wife. He cared about the loss of his hands. And because he cared, that led him to the second component, which is commit. Mitch's dad was committed to finding a solution. And traditionally, when we talk about innovation, we talk about, well, people are just involved in innovation or they're not committed. And the difference is, part of the stories that I share on LinkedIn every Monday is this Motivational Monday joke. And to illustrate the difference between committed and being involved, let me share with you one of these jokes. So a pig and a chicken are crossing the road, socially distanced of course, and they are walking down the road, and the chicken turns to the pig and says, "Hey, we should open up a restaurant." And the pig goes, "Well, what would we call it?" And the chicken thinks for a while and goes, "Let's call it ham and eggs." And the pig goes, nah, because in that case, I would be committed, but you, my friend, would be just involved. Because the pig has to give up his life in order to make the ham. The chicken lays the egg, walks away, happy days. And we know this in organizations when we're committed to things, but we just don't care. We give up our life for things and we just don't care, and then we burn out. So it's important, the care piece, and then be committed, really committed to this solution that you're trying to find, to solving this problem. Be committed to it. And you find that if people care, it makes it much easier to commit. So that's the second pillar. The third pillar, of course, is that once you care and you're committed, you've got to create something. You've got to create something that solves a problem. And it doesn't need to be something really big. It could be something so small that allows you to remove friction from either your customer interactions or your employees to do their job. You have to create something that removes friction. Like Mitch's dad created something that will clean the gutters quite easily for his mum. No level of frictions right there. So identify the friction in your organization. What's clogging up your gutters? And what could you build to clean them? So you've got to create stuff. And the last piece of this innovation framework is you have to connect once you've created. You have to connect with people. You have to connect with people inside the organization, outside the organization, whoever this invention that you come up with, this solution to the problem, you have to connect with people and get them to care. Mitch's dad, when he built that system, he was very easy to connect with his mum, say, "Hey, I've built this system, it's great, works." Mitch shared that story with me, thus connecting with me, and now I'm connecting with you by sharing that story. And if I've done it properly, you will care about this model, this heart-centered innovation model. So those are the four pillars: the care, the commit, the create, and the connect. Because what do we normally do in an organization? Well, we don't really care. We might be committed, mostly likely we're involved, but we create a whole bunch of stuff, but then we find that it just doesn't connect with anyone. We don't tell great stories, great emotional innovation stories to help people connect, to help people buy into it. And as a result, we achieve innovation failure or digitalization failure or just a whole bunch of project failure because we don't get people connected. We don't get them caring about stuff. And that is heart-centered innovation. And when you embed it into your organization at the cultural level, beautiful things start to happen. And the first step that you need to take is getting people to care. And I don't have time to go through the whole framework for your specific organization because it could be varied depending on what you're doing. But my focus question to you is, what does it look like when you know someone cares? Ask yourself that question and then ask your team, ask your people around you, what does it look like when someone cares? How does that make you feel? And that'll give you clues on how to get people to care for your specific circumstances. My name is AJ Kulatunga. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I hope it serves you establish the new normal in this era of business as unusual. And if you'd like to go in deeper and get really specific to your organization and your circumstances and your particular ecosystem of customers, clients, project partners, stakeholders, please get in touch with me. I look forward to helping you establish a workaround solutions during this era of business as unusual. Thank you.